you wrote this article denouncing the people who came out saying historians against Trump. What was wrong with what they were doing?
What was wrong with what they were doing is that they were not analyzing Trump in relation, let's say, to some earlier politician. What they were saying was, in effect, we are historians. We, as a group of historians, at least this group of historians who are signatories toward the letter, have decided that Trump is a bad person and that you shouldn't vote for him. And that's what was wrong with the letter. They were attaching political, or they were trying to dress up political advice with their credentials. Their credentials have nothing to do with their ability to give political advice. Having an advanced degree in history or any other subject does not confer on you a general wisdom. It confers on you a wisdom appropriate to the realm of expertise of that subject. And it certainly doesn't confer on you the wisdom that should allow, or rather, the wisdom that should result in people listening to your political advice.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
Do you agree or disagree with Stanley Fish?
I'm not sure how much. I wondered actually how much he believed what he was saying, because in fact some of it was so wonderfully provocative. I thought maybe it was a piece of performance art. I fundamentally disagree with some of the propositions that he laid out, especially that the Academy needs to be more monastic, and somehow we have to wall ourselves even further off from what goes on. I think the distinction he was trying to make at the outset, that historians it's perfectly appropriate for us to talk about matters of historical information, but then we shouldn't tell people what to do, is one of those proverbial distinctions without a difference. The job of me telling you this is to persuade you to think differently about the issue. So implicitly, I am asking you to rethink your thinking. So, as I said, I found that to be not a particularly useful distinction that he was making.
Disagree with what Stanley Fish says?
Well, I do, because he seems to think that as historians we should stay in the archives and never emerge to engage with highly charged political discussions of the day, that our expertise really stops at the classroom door, and that we might have a little to offer the larger public, but that we shouldn't take a stand on political issues. We can inform, but not advocate. And I argue that we're citizens as well as historians, as well as academics, and we certainly do have an obligation. And in many cases, we don't have a choice, because history today is highly politicized. The election was highly historicized, in the sense that history was constantly being discussed. Make America Great Again. What does that mean when the president-elect harkens back to the early 20th century and the 1940s and 50s? What exactly does that mean? So I think historians have a lot to offer the conversation. We don't always agree among ourselves, and that's fine. That's great. But to kind of push us out of the conversation, or to claim that we're trying to do more than we are, I think is a bit disingenuous and unfair, really, to our enterprise as historians.
And I think it's important for people who are contemplating political decisions to have the best information and the best forms of analysis available, and often historians will provide both. So that's quite a different thing from historians telling people whom to vote for.
So your objection is that they came out with their opinion, but isn't people's opinion, a scholar's opinion, filtered, whether explicit or implicit, in anything that they write? Because all of what we write is subjective.
I don't believe that all that we write is subjective. I certainly do believe that there's some element of subjectivity having to do with our own personal educations and courses of life, but that if you're a member of a discipline, you have been introduced to, and in fact have internalized, the ways of thinking, modeling, and analyzing that are appropriate to that discipline. So that the more that you become a member of the discipline, what the sociologists call a competent practitioner, the less those subjective aspects of your experience will in fact be in play.
Do you agree with Stanley Fish?
Well, I don't agree with Stanley Fish's claim that historians shouldn't be engaged in politics. I take his point about how sometimes historians go beyond what they really know in some of their political claims. But I do think that the kind of expertise we have does allow and sometimes even enjoin us to engage in a kind of political dialogue.
So, did you have a problem with the historians against Trump?
I did. Even though I do agree with the idea that historians should be engaged in politics, I didn't sign the statement because I didn't agree with the argument that the statement made. The statement said quite directly that Trump and the Trump candidacy violates the values and the corpus of our profession. That Trump itself was an attack on what the statement called professional values. And I just don't agree with that. You know, I think that the profession is much more capacious than that. I think it has 1,000 different highways and byways. And I think it's quite dangerous for us as a profession, as a discipline, to simply write off Trump voters as antithetical to our values. I think that contributes to a nasty kind of polarization that's on the land.